a storm will grieve when you're far, far away from the home that you'll soon be leaving. And it's many a time by night and by day that your heart will be sorely grieving for the strangers.
Here, the old stories speak of oak groves once towering like living cathedrals, and an alphabet drawn from the trees themselves. Stone circles stand upright after thousands of years, greeting the sun on solstice. And the hawthorn branches that hang above the holy wells are wrapped in prayer, tied tightly in colorful bits of cloth. All traces left by a people whose wisdom and understanding were rooted in respect for the natural world. They were shaped by it, held by it. Man and woman weren't born separate from this land, they were of it. Over 160 years have passed since my family walked these hills, called this land home, and spoke their mother tongue. The Irish famine had set in, and like so many at the time, they boarded ships, leaving their families, their land, their songs, and their culture all behind them. And now, I return as a stranger, a curious song collector and a foreign great-granddaughter, searching to gather my roots, or what little remains of them. Water of life, would you teach me to sing your sweet song? And though great winds blow, oh my people, we must carry on. I wasn't born into a musical family, but somehow I was born with song. From my earliest memory I was singing, always drawn by what can be expressed through melody that can't be said with words. So much of human history is also coded in song. Long before the days of the printing press, communities would share stories, knowledge, and life lessons through singing to one another. With so much forgotten, I devoted myself to gathering and tending old songs. By 30, my life was an endless cycle of touring and travel to learn what I could of the local music. I was past lullabies and laments for love lost. I had songs to mark the passage of the seasons and the cycles of life and death. I could sing in over 20 languages, yet I knew not a single song from my family, nor one word in their ancestral language. I lacked true north, and something in me remained searching and rootless. I know very little of my ancestors' lives before they left Ireland. Once they crossed the Atlantic, life became about surviving. Their names were anglicized and their culture washed from them in the soot-filled coal mines of Appalachia. No songs or stories trickled down the generations. As I dig deeper into their past, I can gather that they would have been simple farming people, living in rhythm with the seasons, reaping and sowing. I distinctly remember the first time I came to Ireland. It was during a European summer tour in 2015 that I received an invitation to do a small concert on the west coast of Kerry in a little town called Dingle. I'd been told that Dingle had a vibrant music tradition and rich history, and was eager to visit the homeland my grandmother was so fiercely proud of. In the beginning, I kept quiet observation. Later, I was told that it was a grave offense to remain silent at a session if you had a song to share. So I reluctantly offered a song here or there, but the music that I knew seemed odd in this environment. I thirsted to taste the Irish language in song and the shared repertoire of this community. I ached to discover some sense of belonging to this place. I met Muireann here in Dingle. She is a mother and well-respected traditional Irish flutist and sean singer, whom along with her husband, Dr. Billy Maglin, an Irish folklorist and archaeologist, are working to bring back Gaelic song and wisdom in their work and lives. So I want to go back to the topic of immigration and of the famine times and the conditions that people were enduring during that time.
Nothing like talking about the famine.
Sorry.
Well, it was just decimation. I mean, first of all, it's important to know that it wasn't really a famine. Mm-hmm. So Ireland was full of food, but it was being exported. Yeah. So that's the first thing. I suppose it's interesting in terms of music. There are very few songs from famine times, which I think speaks volumes. And my dad always just says the music stopped.
Yeah.
It just stopped.
I think trauma is the overwhelming theme of that. The Irish people were traumatized in a way that they still haven't fully recovered from. I mean, it echoes down the generations. Because if you look at culture pre-famine, it's very, very different to post-famine culture. It was a lot looser. It was, the social structures and the pressures and the control that was exerted by lots of different forces after the famine was really not in place. And you see an emergence of a more Anglo-centric middle class emerging after the famine who were taking their cultural cues from Victorian England. People were made to feel ashamed of their own culture, internally and externally.
And that carries through till today, but even a lot of my generation's parents who would have been native Irish speakers would have chosen to speak English to their children because they thought they were giving their children the best chance in life. It's important to keep a positive spin on this beautiful language, and its richness is that it explains to us who we are. Even when we speak it in English, I think that the way we speak English is informed by the Irish language. Even people who aren't Irish speakers, we speak around things. Sometimes English seems to be very clinical. There's a word for everything. Whereas I think when I listen to people with really beautiful, rich Irish, there's a way to describe everything. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
One of the eye-opening things about Irish, when you compare it to English, just on a very basic level, there's two verbs to be. So you can be in a different way about certain things. So like any bilingual or trilingual person, if you have different perspectives on things, it just allows for what I think is a richer way of observing things.
And a richer emotional understanding. Like even if you take it really simply, like I am hungry, but in Irish it's the hunger is upon me. Just all these ways, it kind of opens up your brain to seeing things in a different way. So I'm in love with you, I have love for you, there is love on me. Like all these ways of thinking of emotions rather than just direct.
I suppose what makes Irish advantageous when you're speaking it in Ireland is you're looking at the historical context, you're looking at the cultural context, you're looking at the environmental context of it, and that is the language that has been here for thousands of years. So you're going to be informed in a very different way about where you are.
20 years ago, I wouldn't have sung that much in Irish when I was abroad or even outside of the Gaelic. I might do one. But now I sing mostly in Irish. The whole ethos of it has changed and people's mindset around their own identity has changed.
Yeah.
And I think the revival of Seanos is reflective of that.
How do we pick up the pieces of a splintered past to find belonging? And even then, how do we reckon with the truth? We live in a post-colonial world. Like most Americans, I live on unceded tribal territory and therefore am part of the same systems of oppression and colonization that drove my ancestors from their home 5 generations ago. But where do I belong? And for that matter, where do so many of us belong?
Vai na grena fin siot legal, vai na ha.
Hugga mar hain an saoire lin. And in the first verse, Hugga mar linne.
Hugga mar hain an saoire lin.
An gai an chríomhí.
An gai an chríomhí.
Hugga mar hain an saoire
A song can store the history of a people and simultaneously release it. An informal pub session can move from a rowdy celebration into a grief ritual in a moment. Here, music is comfort. Music is harmony, fellowship, and prayer. And as I look around me, I see that I'm not the only one taking in the beauty of this place, drinking in the culture as it fills me. There are many young faces, some of them Irish, and many of them foreign, returning to follow a thread and find some sense of belonging for themselves. I'm only beginning to grasp at the depth and poetic beauty of the Irish language and how its syntax gives way to a richer experience of life's joys and sorrows. I've been incredibly fortunate to find teachers who are Irish speakers, passionate about preserving the language and culture, and also willing to share it with me. There's a phrase that comes from West Kerry to express trust in someone, which gives insight to the inherent poetry of the language. Muchesavort lana hasachina, which translates literally as "you are the place where I stand on the day when my feet are sore." I think of the Irish music tradition in this way. It's a hallowed ground where the tired feet of tragedy and trauma lay down to rest, and in kind, the celebration of resilient life rises up to dance. A storm when the evening mist over mountains and meadows falling, won't you turn a star from the throng and the list, and maybe you hear me calling for the sound of a voice that is sorely missed, for somebody's speedy